Hello and welcome to part 3 of the Rivals of Ether workshop tutorial series. This time we will tackle attacks and everything related to attacks. So, how attacks work, how to create attacks, and all you need to know to make basic attacks. So nothing that requires actual coding knowledge, let's say like this up tilt or up tilt. So, first of all, what is an attack? An attack is a state, like any other player state, like idle, dash, walk. Attacking is a state, and which attack you do is decided by the attack variable. An attack is made of windows, which are basically like parts the attack is split in. You have full control over how windows work, and the standard for it usually is a window for startup, one for active, and one for end lag. So, for example, up tilt and so startup, active, end lag. Attacks have separate hurt boxes, as you can see here, which are just where the character should be hit. These are meant to be animation strips, like for the attack itself. Let me get up tilt. So you can see here we have the up tilt and the hurt box. A particular thing about the hurt box is that if you're using small sprites, the hurt box still needs to be double the size. In load.gml, if you're using small sprites, when offsetting attacks, you need to put either small sprites or 1 or true at the end to tell that this is the animation is small. So when offsetting the hurt box, it will actually use double this value, which allows it to work properly for the hurt box. Now let's get a look at how a basic attack script looks using up tilt as reference, and then we will rebuild up tilt from scratch. So attacks take some basic definitions using set attack value, which includes stuff like the sprite and the hurt box. Actually, let me go in the manual. If you go in attack grid indexes, these are all the indexes for the attack. So set attack value, like the category, the sprite, the air sprite if the attack can go airborne, the hurt box, how many windows it has. In this case, using template tester, we have a system that automatically takes how many windows there are and gives it to the number of windows. If it has landing lag, which is important to give to aerials, how much the landing lag is, if the attack should go off the edge, if it has a charge window, if so, strong attacks. If it has custom gravity, which is a bit more complex to use than it seems, since you need to define gravity for each window. And if it has no parry stun. Then there are the window specifics. So let's go into the windows themselves. A basic window is made of these three elements, which is the length of the window in frames, so how many in-game frames the window lasts, the amount of animation frames the window takes. In the case of up tilt, you can see the active frame is 1, so we want to give it 1 frame, and then the starting frame. In this case, the best way to get the starting frame is to take the frame you want to show and simply put how many frames there are before it, because frames are ordered from 0. So this is frame 0, 1, 2. So since this is the third frame, it has 2 frames before it, you just put 2 here. You can see the first window has no frame start because the default value for it is 0, since it's the first frame. Windows also can have sound effects, which are specified with these indexes. you can find all the information you need on the manual. Windows can also have movement. Let's take up special for example. Up special gives vertical speed on the last frame. It gives -10 vertical speed. It sets to -10. There are many types of speed you can give. The type 0 simply adds to the speed. The type 1 sets to the speed on every frame. Type 2 sets the speed as on the first frame. Windows themselves can have types which define how the window behaves. There is normal, which is 0, 4 skips, which is specifically for Zetterburn, 7, which goes into pratfall, as you can see here, 8, which goes into the next one if you land, 9, which is looping. A thing about 9 is that to make it work properly, you need to code specific behavior for it, which will be tackled in the intermediate section of the tutorials. Then 10, all of these are described, all of these behaviors. One last important thing to mention is cancels, specifically for jab. The way jabs are set up is that in the jab animation strip, you can see each jab piece also has the end lag for it that goes back into idle, and the startup for the jab after, which goes back into idle. Then startup for the jab after, which goes back into idle. The way you set up these is that you'd have a window which has this cancel type, which you can find here. 0 does not cancel, 1 cancels if attack is pressed, and 2 cancels if special is pressed. And this is the frame on which it will cancel, not the frame from which you can cancel. You can still buffer the cancel. But if pressed after, if the buffer hits after this frame, then it will cancel all the time. It's important for jabs because if there's this cancel one, when this window ends, the whole attack will cancel back into idle instead of going into the next window. So this requires a second press to go into the next window. Now let's build an attack from scratch before tackling hitboxes. So I'll try to recreate up tilt from scratch. I'll just comment it out. Whenever you create new files, always remember to reload the project. So I'll just comment this all out and we'll create a new up tilt. So you can see now in game, up tilt doesn't work anymore. So first of all, using the tester template, next we want the, actually let me hide all of this. So this is AG sprite get up tilt. And then this for the hurt box, and then up tilt hurt. Now for the windows. Let's create the window holder variable. Set window value attack window, then the index, which is AG length first, and so let me get the up tilt strip. So we need length, we need frames and frame start. These are the three values for a window. Then we want this attack to have three windows because startup, active, and end lag. So we'll just copy this over and increase the window value by 1 each time. Now we'll define the values for each. So startup as 2 frames, active as 1, and end lag as 4. We don't need the frame start on first window, 2, and 3. Now for the length. What I usually do for the length, it depends on the animator, but for attacks I tend to do 3 times the amount, but also it's a mix of what looks good and also feels good in game / works well in terms of balance. So in this case, this is a quick small up tilt. I'd go with 4. The original value for it was 5. You can increase it a bit if you want. This is the active window. I usually do 3 frames for hitboxes, not 2. Tester does 2. And then we'll give it, let's say, 10 frames of end lag. Most importantly, attacks that aren't specials need the whiff flag, which is extra end lag if the attack hasn't hit. Simply give this a 1, because the way whiff flag works is that it simply takes this value and multiplies it by 1.5 if you whiffed, so this becomes 15 frames instead. Let's try the up tilt in game. Oh yeah, I haven't set the number of windows. There we go. So we have the basic attack. It's missing sound effects, so we'll quickly add the sounds to it. This is always set to true because it tells the rivals, set it to 1, tells rivals that yes, the attack has a sound effect. This one defines the sound effect. So in this case, I'll give it swipe, medium. No, actually, let's do weak 2. This is a pretty small attack. If you go in the manual, in the sound effects list, you'll be able to find a list of the sound effects. Otherwise, if you want, there are certain mods you can use in Rivals, which allow you to view both sound effects and hit effects. This should be the one, this one. This only works on keyboards though. The attack should have, oh yeah, let me reload. F5. It has a sound effect now. All it's lacking is a hitbox. So let's give the attack a hitbox. Num equals 1. Then do set num hitboxes attack num. This tells the rivals that this attack has this amount of hitboxes to it, and this variable allows us to control the hitbox stuff dynamically, so we don't have to specify the number manually. The hitbox grid indexes in the manual, you'll find all the indexes for hitboxes. So set hitbox value attack num and then hg underscore and whatever we want. First thing you need to define, so parent hitbox, I don't recommend using it because it can be a headache to handle, but it basically copies this data from another hitbox. This is the type of the hitbox. So in this case, we want a physical hitbox. So 1. Next, we want to give it which window the hitbox spawns in. So in this case, window 2, because this is window 1, this is window 2. Then HG lifetime, which is how long the the hitbox will exist on screen. So in this case, 3 frames, because the window lasts 3 frames. Then you can set the window creation frame if you want to not create it on frame 1 of the window. It allows you to maybe create it later, or no, just later in the window. So then you need to define the X and the Y position of the hitbox. I'll leave them both to 0 for now. And the width and height. We'll put the width to, let's say, like a 30, and the height to a 60. Now you can see that the hitbox spawns and that it's also sized correctly. It is colored weirdly because of the colored hitbox template that's on tester. But if you want to handle your hitbox better, there is this handy tool by Huponia, which is the Hitbox Helper Buddy, which you can find on Workshop. You can download it off of the Workshop, and it allows you to edit hitboxes dynamically. So you go use the mouse, you click on a hitbox, you can move it around, you can place it where you want it to be, and stretch it. And there we go. Then you just take this data here, and you copy it over. So 6 minus 56, 36, and then 81. Now when you reload the character, it will have the updated hitbox. You can also give the hitbox a different shape, which is just like, the circle, the square, or a rounded rectangle. There are also variants for semicircle and square left, though these are not accessible through this bit here. This is more intermediate level, so we won't tackle them. Now let's cover some other hitbox properties, which is the group. So hitboxes in the same group will only be able to hit the opponent once. So if a hitbox so 2 hitboxes in the same group will be able to hit the opponent. Only one of them will be able to hit the opponent, regardless of if they come on different frames or the same frame. Then you have the priority, which tells you which hitbox hits if to overlap on the opponent, how much damage, the angle flipper, which allows you to modulate how the opponent is sent, the knockback scaling. So let's create our hitbox stats. First thing I like to define is the angle. This is an up tilt, so it should send up. Then we want to always give it actually before angle is priority. Priority matters because it also defines how it interacts with projectiles. You always need to define priority, otherwise the hitbox won't work. Priority defaults to 0, and priority 0 can only hit projectiles, not opponents. So let's give it priority 6. Angle is 90. Then let's move to knockback. This is the base knockback. We'll give it a value of 6. Actually, let me grab a CPU so we can also test the attack on it. So as you can see here, the attack is not hitting because it had no priority before. I still need to reload. So let's define the rest. Let's give it some knockback scaling. 0.6. So now it's hitting and it's giving knockback. However, it's not dealing damage because we haven't given it damage yet. This is an up tilt, still value of 7. Maybe it needs some more base, like 8. And slightly lower scaling. Then let's give it some hit pause of 6 frames. And actually, no, let's do 8. And then HG scaling of 0.45. Now it has a bit more impact. It's still lacking sound effects though. We'll take care of those soon. But it is hitting. An important thing about hit pause is that you always want to give an attack hit pause because an attack with 0 hit pause cannot be DI'd. So, like, an opponent cannot use directional influence to change the attack angle if it. Now, let me just give an example. I'll put 0 and 0 on both of these. You could see Eliana got sent slightly to the right. Now she's just being sent straight up because you can't DI, so you can't influence where she's being sent. If, let's say, we want to give this attack a sweet spot, we'd create a separate hitbox. So this, and then increase this by 1, create it on the same frame. I'll reload and then go into frame by frame. First hitbox here. Frame by frame, do up tilt. So now we have 2 hitboxes here. The second one is this one. You can see the number here. We'll shrink it up a bit and make a sweet spot right here on the top. So I'll just copy the values over. 77, 137. Then we'll give it a higher priority, like 8. Increase the damage and knockback and knockback scaling. More hit pause. Actually, same hit pause but higher scaling. And there we go. Now this should function because they have both the same hitbox group. Since it's default, it's unset, so it defaults to 0. So you can see now it's hitting, only the top one is hitting, not both of them. Let's keep adding things to the attack, which is sound effects. And in this case, we'll do set get because we use the base game sounds. Effects blow head. No, this is the sweet spot. So maybe medium 2, and then for this one, we'll do week 1. Oh yeah, important thing I forgot to mention. SFX frame. I usually set this to the value of the window -1, so it's synced well with the hit sound. Lastly, hit effect. We want to give maybe the sweet spot a bigger hit effect. So HG visual, and we'll do effects big omni no gen big, which is the big general hit effect. Now you can see it's bigger. And if I go get a smaller character like Ori, I'm hitting only the sour spot. Next, let's talk a little about projectiles using neutral special as reference. So projectiles are particular because they are defined like hitboxes, but they work differently. They're not static with the character. They require sprites and stuff, and they run the hitbox scripts. But apart from that, they also have a bunch of other properties. Oh yeah, do give a read to this part of the manual for extra information. For example, if you want to give an attack like jab this flinching property, you just do force flinch. Otherwise, there are a bunch of other properties you can give to basic attacks. Just look around here. Then let's move to the projectile properties, which is the projectile sprite, which here is already set to the base Zetterburn projectile. The mask. So an important thing about the mask, if it's not set to -1 or a sprite, it will try to use the projectile sprite. It is recommended you either do -1 or give it a sprite for the collider. This is specifically for hitting opponents. Then you have the collision sprite, which is for the floor. You don't really need it if the projectile doesn't interact with the floor. Otherwise, it will just use the animation sprite. Projectiles need to be offset on the center because the origin point of projectiles is the middle of the projectile, which is also the origin point of, well, hitboxes. You can see here where the arrow is coming. This is the center of the projectile, also where the sprite is offset. If we were to... Oh wait, this is a base game asset, we can't offset it. But we can do this. And changing the size, you can see, also influences the sprite. Then you have the animation speed, which is just the animation speed of the projectile. You can give it the speed. You can give it gravity if you want. Like, I can give it maybe a gravity of 0.5, for example. Now it falls. It can have ground or air friction. And these are how the projectile interacts with solids and opponents. In this case, it breaks when it touches the ground. This is a news. And these are a bunch of other things, like parry stun. If you go into parry stun from projectiles, if it reflects. An important thing about reflection is that when a projectile reflects, the player variable on it changes as well. So that matters with ownership and stuff for checks. We'll tackle this more in the intermediate section. Transcendent is important because it cannot be broken by other hitboxes. By default, projectiles get broken by hitboxes. This is just the destroy effect when the projectile like touches the ground, for example. And then you have these two, which interact with Clarence Plasma Field and Ori's Bash, though this one doesn't really work properly. This one basically makes the projectile not get destroyed by the plasma field. You can find a list of everything in here. That should be all for attacks, for basic attacks. Next lesson we will tackle how to make alt colors and alt costumes. So by this point, if you're making a very basic character, you should have basically a character with basic attacks like this tester if you're not making anything advanced. So fully finished character with very basic moveset. Well, that should be all. On to the next.